Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Trash or Football. Today, we're going to talk about my way too early 12-team playoff predictions. Now, for those who do not know, and I've been living under a rock the last year or two, this season will be the first ever 12-team playoff in college football. Now introducing the 5+7 method, which means the four Power 5 conference champions and the highest ranked Group 5 team. So 5 automatic bids. 4 to the 4 Power 4 conference, because Pac-12, is falling apart. We'll get an automatic bid. The top 4, and somewhere, usually probably 11 or 12, will probably be the Group 5 team. So then there's your next 7 bids, which is your at-large bids. Will usually be between 5 through 12, and one of those in the 5 through 12 will be your Group 5 automatic bid. So I've got my top 12 right here for my way too early 12-team playoff predictions, and without further ado, let's go ahead and get into it. At number 12, I have the Tulane Green Wave as the the American Athletic Conference champions. Now, they have shown themselves to be a very, very good team. They beat USC in the Cotton Bowl a couple of seasons ago, which was very funny, by the way. They did lose their head coach, but I don't think that their success is going to change because they're going to have a new head coach. I think the new head coach is John Summerall, something like that. I think he was at Troy before. I really can't wait to see what they can do there. Tulane getting the 12 spot. Actually, once we get done with our 12, I will discuss who I think will win each game. So we're not just going to do the rankings. We're going to do the entire playoff predictions. So Tulane, I think, is the obvious pick right here. You could lean Boise State. Shout out to Fridge, the co-host of the channel. You really could, but I think I'm just going to roll with Tulane. I think that only one Group 5 team will make it this year. And the number 11, I have the Utah Utes at an at-large bid. Now, Cam Rising is going to be returning after the injury. He did have to medically redshirt, but the NCAA did give him the medical redshirt, so he got to sit out a year, and he will be back. But, he did have to sit out an entire season when people expected him back by week 1, week 2, week 3. He never played a single down that entire season. Is he still hurt? We'll have to see. But in my opinion, this is just my opinion, I think he's going to be back to near 100%, if not 100. I think he is still a wonderful quarterback. This Utah team is very good. Kyle Whittingham is a fantastic coach. Top 5 coach in the country, in my opinion. Get mad at me all you want. They're consistently one of the greatest teams in the Pac-12 now that they're in the Big 12. It remains to be seen, but I think that they should be fighting for a top 3 spot in their conference, if not the Big 12 championship game. We'll just have to see how that goes, but in my opinion, I do have Utah at the number 11 seed. And then up next, I have, this one's going to be controversial, the Michigan Wolverines, ladies and gentlemen. Now, I do know a lot of you are probably going to get mad at me for this, but Michigan is losing a lot of talent. They lost, Jim Harbaugh, J.J. McCarthy. I know he's the head coach. Shut up. Keep on typing in the comments. Their quarterback, J.J. McCarthy. They lost Blake Corum. You lost Chris Jenkins, who was a wonderful defensive tackle. Mike St. I don't even know how to remember what his name is. I just remember his name was Mike. He was the corner. Blake Corum, like I said a minute ago, that's a really big loss. He was a really, really good running back. And I think he's going to do some really good things in the NFL. Cornelius Johnson was a really good wide receiver. This team has lost a lot of talent. Even on the O-line, I think they lost 2 guards to the NFL draft. This is going to be a really down part of a season for Michigan. But, they still have a chance on going back-to-back. I do think they make the playoffs. I just don't think they're going to be a top 4 team like they were last season. I do have Michigan at my number 10 seed. And then going to the number 9 seed, I have the Alabama Crimson Tide. Yes, I do have Alabama. And man, oh man, has things changed over the offseason. Nick Saban is no longer the head coach of the Alabama Crimson Tide. I never thought that we would ever see this day in the history of college football. We all knew it would happen, but we never pondered the idea. You know, they lost J.C. Latham, probably the best offensive tackle in the draft, either him or Joe Alt. Dallas Turner, Kool-Aid McKinstry, Jermaine Burton, Justin Eboigbe or whatever his name is, Terrion Arnold. I mean, and even Jace McClellan, who was a pretty good running back. You lose Will Reichard, a kicker. He was one of the greatest kickers in the country at his time at Alabama. And Alabama, over the last decade or so, has been known, except for when Reichard was the kicker, Alabama's been known to not have good kickers. Do you guys remember the 2013 Iron Bowl? Do you guys remember when Adam Griffith missed the field goal? Man, Alabama's lost a lot, including the legendary Nick Saban, but that's not going to hold them back from still making the playoffs. Alabama is still a very good team. You still keep Jalen Milroe, which is really the only last notable player that's still left on this Alabama team. But if there's one thing that Alabama has been known for, that's creating depth. Now, I don't know about the depth for positions after Nick Saban leaves, because I don't know how great Kalen DeBoer will be at the head coach at Alabama. But we can say for certain that Alabama is going to be a good enough team with the backups that were playing last season that they will now. I don't know who a lot of these players are, but I do have reason to believe for the past, 17 years Nick Saban being the head coach, I do think that there's a reason for us to believe that, yes, the backups are going to be just fine. They're not going to be the top SEC team in the country like they have been the last almost 2 decades now, but they're going to be a top 12 team, and I do think that they're going to get the number 9 spot, at least in my playoffs right here. And then in my number 8 spot, I do have the Notre Dame Fighting Irish out of South Bend, Indiana. You know, getting Riley Leonard from Duke to come to Notre Dame was probably the best thing that could have happened to them. You know, you lose Sam Hartman to the NFL draft. Well, I don't think he was drafted. I think he was an undrafted free agent, but that doesn't matter. You lose him. He was probably your best player last season. Notre Dame has been consistently great, but they haven't been able to reach the point of elite. You know what I mean? I don't know how they're going to be able to do. You do have Marcus Freeman still as the head coach of Notre Dame. I do want to make sure that he is. Yes, he is still the head coach of Notre Dame. He's a really good coach. And he's very young. You know, he's only 19-8 at Notre Dame. He hasn't been awful. His first season, he did go 0-1. I think he was an interim head coach, 9-4, 10-3, and upcoming now into his 3rd season as a full-time head coach. This is going to be a pretty decent Notre Dame team. I do have some questions on their defense, but I think that their offense is going to be good enough. I mean, they're an independent team. I'm honestly tired of independent teams. Isn't there only 2 independent teams left? Okay, there's 4 teams that are independent. Army, Notre Dame, Connecticut, and UMass. There's a huge difference between Notre Dame and Connecticut and UMass, and I guess you can throw Army off to the side because they're a military team. Notre Dame should not be sitting in a conference where they don't have any real conference matchups. Join the ACC. Join the Big Ten. Shoot, reform the Big East. With all of these ACC teams that want to leave, reform the Big East. That was one of the coolest conferences with like Rutgers and Syracuse and Louisville back in the day. That was a really fun conference. Bring it back. Move some of these kind of middle tier Big Ten and ACC teams into a Big East conference. That would be really fun. But off with the rant now. I do think Notre Dame's going to be the 8th spot in my playoffs. And they really could be higher if they would play in a freaking conference, because if they would win a conference, they would probably get a top 4 spot. It's not that hard, Notre Dame. Just join one and stick with one. Don't pull no COVID situation where you choose ACC to be the redheaded stepchild of the conference. Join one full-fledged, because I'm honestly tired of them being an independent team. And keep crying in the comments if you think I'm stupid for that. All right, I had to make myself calm down a little bit after that. In my number 7 spot, I do have the Ole Miss Rebels. Now, Ole Miss has also been a very consistent SEC team, and I think that they're going to be better than Alabama this season. Jackson Dart has a possibility of being a top 2 quarterback in the SEC, maybe top 3 with Carson Beck and Quinn Ewers. You know, you did lose Quinshawn Judkins because of, I can't remember his name, the other running back announcing his return. He didn't want to split carries, but Quinshawn Judkins is probably going to end up splitting carries again up in Ohio State. But we'll have to see. But last season, they did win 11 games for the first time ever in the entirety of Ole Miss's football team program history. They finally won 11 games. And I think that they've still got a lot more to prove. And I think that Jackson Dart is going to lead them all the way to a number seed playoff spot. They'll probably go 11 wins, 10 wins again. But I think that they can be able to make a deep playoff run, depending on who they play against. And then in my number 6 spot, halfway through the playoffs, I have the Oregon Ducks. Now, Oregon, in my opinion, has the biggest chance to go like 11-1, maybe 12-0 in this playoffs in this upcoming season. There's only maybe one loss that I really see them for, and that's against Ohio State. I think that, Dylan Gabriel being the new head coach, or not the head coach, the new quarterback for Oregon could really keep their offense a-moving. Their defense is going to keep them moving. I just think that they're only going to struggle against one team and one team only, and that's Ohio State. So that if they did win the conference, I'd probably put them at the number 2 seed. But I don't think that they can beat Ohio State, so I do have them at number 7. Or number 6, sorry. I had Ole Miss at number 7. Sorry, I was looking at the Google Doc wrong that I typed up with all my notes and stuff. But Oregon is going to be a very, very good team. It's just, unfortunately, the way that the playoffs are seeded is weird. It's not just the top 12 best teams, ladies and gentlemen. It's not just the top 12 best teams. Like, you could go 9-3 and somehow still win your conference and get a top 4 playoff spot. Exactly. Don't you guys see, like, how crazy that is? To just get automatically, like, lose 3 fluke games and then still somehow win your conference due to something going on weird. Like, we'll get to that when we get to it, because I have an idea of what could happen. But it's weird. But in my opinion, Oregon is a top 3, top 4 team. But to me, they're going to have to get the number 6 seed because they're not going to win the Big Ten. It's going to go to Ohio State. And then at number 5, I have the Texas Longhorns. Now, this goes back to not the top 12 ranked best teams, because honestly, Texas is probably the second or third best team in the country. You're thinking, then why'd you put that at number 5? Because they're probably not going to win the SEC. They're probably going to make it to the SEC championship game against Georgia, and we'll get to them later in the video. But they can't make a top 4 spot if they don't win their conference. Texas is a wonderful team. Quinn Ewers is an elite SEC quarterback. Didn't think I would have said that 2 years ago. He's really, ever since he shaved off the mullet, it's like he shaved off dead weight metaphorically too. I do have a lot of trust in this Texas team. I only see them losing to Georgia. They could also probably lose to Georgia again in the SEC championship in a rematch, which is, I'm like 95% sure is what's going to happen. But yeah, I do have Texas at my number 5 spot here in the playoffs. Now, ladies and gentlemen, entering my top 4 seeds. These are the top Power 4 conference champions. Now that the Pac 12 is falling apart faster than a greasy hamburger, I do have Oklahoma State at the number 4 playoff seed winning the Big 12. In my opinion, I think the Big 12 championship is either going to be Oklahoma State and Utah, Oklahoma State, Arizona, or Utah, Arizona. It's going to be one of those three. But I think the biggest possible chance is Oklahoma State versus Utah, with Oklahoma State finally winning the Big 12 this year after Texas and Oklahoma leaving the Big 12. It gives some of these other teams a chance at winning the conference. I think that they're going to be the worst of the 4 Power 4 conference champion winners. So I do have to put them at the number 4 spot. But if this was just like the top 12 teams, they easily could be like 10 or 12. Honestly, they're going to get a bye week. A bye week. The rest of these teams are going to be playing on conferences. These top 4 teams are going to be playing New Year's 6 bowl games in the playoffs after their bye week. And Oklahoma State's probably going to lose after their bye week. I just don't think the Big 12 is really great. I mean, you probably have the ACC at 3 or 4, and then the Big 12 at 3 or 4, and then you could argue for the SEC or the Big 10 at 1 or 2. But there's a big space between SEC, Big 10, and Big 12 ACC. There's a huge gap. But I think I'd edge the Big 12 over the ACC, but not in the playoff rankings, because at number 3, I do have Clemson at the ACC champions. Now, Clemson has had a lot of down years. I have been saying, as a joke for the most part, that Dabo Swinney is the Jimbo Fisher of the ACC. Now, could they get a bounce back year? Yeah. With Florida State losing all of this talent, Clemson has a possibility of being another one of those 10-3, maybe 10 or not 10-3, 9-3, 10-2 teams to win the conference, along with Oklahoma State. And that's why I like this playoff way, but a lot of people are not, and I understand why people won't. Because a 9-3 or a 10-2 Clemson should not be ranked ahead 11-1 Texas, or an 11-1 Oregon, or an 11-1 maybe 10-2 Ole Miss. In my opinion, I don't know, it's different. In my opinion, I like the way that it is, but it's a little confusing to explain as why I don't like it. If you guys have a different opinion on it, I'd love to hear what you guys think in the comments, but I do have Clemson. They have struggled over the last couple of seasons after, 2020? I'm still a big fan of Cade Klubnik. He played pretty good at the quarterback position at Clemson last season. There's still a lot of people on this roster that have a chance of being pretty good, and I know a lot of Florida State fans are going to be like, well, we went undefeated until we got screwed by Georgia in the College Football Playoff Committee. Dude, Florida State, this is an unbiased opinion. I know I'm a Gators fan. This is 100% unbiased. I don't think you understand how much talent you lost in the offseason. Look at the NFL draft. You were a wonderful team. You still had a lot of holes in that team, but all of your good places that kept you afloat to the possibility of making the playoffs is gone. They're gone. Keon Coleman is gone. Travis Hunter is gone. Jared Verse and Brandon Fisk, they're gone. Trey Benson, who actually was a pretty damn good running back, is gone. You're losing so much talent. But we're not talking about Florida State. This is just me arguing why I think Clemson is going to win the ACC here. But let's go ahead and skip on to the number 2 seed. Now, this one is going to be a little controversial, but I do have Ohio State at the number 2 seed right here as the Big Ten champions. Now, in my my Ohio State predictions video from the Big Ten, I did have them initially going 11-1. I changed my predictions from 11-1 to 10-2, or not 10-2, 12-0, due to the fact that the Penn State-Ohio State game is going to be on Fox. That's going to be a noon game. It's not going to be a whiteout game at night. I do think Ohio State's going to end up getting the win there, but it doesn't make me think that they're still the number 1 team in the country. That's why I don't think they're going to get the number 1 seed. Ryan Day is not a bad coach. Just because he hasn't been as great as Urban Meyer doesn't mean he's not good. I mean, I've heard a lot of Ohio State fans be like, fire him. It's in his coaching clause contract to beat Michigan. Well, ladies and gentlemen, you're probably going to get that this year. I think that Michigan is going to take that step back. That's why I have them this low in our playoffs right here. They're probably still going to make it. But I do have Ohio State going undefeated now, even though my predictions video did have them going 11-1. I do change that Penn State prediction to 12-0. And then at number 1, I feel like this was pretty obvious to everyone. I got the Georgia Bulldogs. They still retain a lot of talent, even though they lose Ladd McConkey and arguably the best player on their team last year, Brock Bowers, to the NFL draft. But Kirby Smart, I hate to break it to you guys, but he's the current day's Nick Saban. Now that Saban's gone, Kirby Smart's the best coach in the country. Georgia is currently the best team in the country. They've lost one game in like the last 2 or 3 seasons now. Or maybe, well, I don't know, because they did lose that Alabama SEC championship game a couple of seasons ago before they won the Natty. But you know what I mean. Losing Nick Saban is going to be great for Georgia. Great, because they don't have that big of a challenge anymore to face off either during the regular season if they play Alabama or in the SEC championship, although the divisions have dissoluted, I guess is the word to say. Dissolved. That's the word. Sorry. I don't know. This is an interesting one. But like I said, this is pretty obvious. You could put Ohio State at number 1 and then Georgia at number 2, but this is my predictions. You can be mad in the comments all you want. This is why it's called a predictions video. And then you say, well, Ohio State's going to be number 1. How do you know? You can't tell me that I'm wrong, because I'm not telling you you're wrong, because this is just my predictions. I could be 100% incorrect, but we'll have to get into it once the season's over. I'll admit if I'm right or wrong at the end of the season. But that is my top 12. Let me go ahead and set up these matchups right here, and we'll get into it right after this. In our first round matchup, this would be, so these 4 games right here will be on college campuses. These will be the first ever college campus playoff games. So the first one would be the number 12 seed Tulane at the number 5 seed Texas Longhorns. Now, the winner of this game will go on to face off against the number 4 ranked Oklahoma State. We'll get there when we get there. Now, Tulane has shown in the past to be a good team that can very well upset some teams. You know, like I said earlier in the video, they had that chance to face off against USC in the Cotton Bowl. They won. Last year, they faced off against Ole Miss. They did lose, but I think that their quarterback was hurt. So I think that that's a good excuse. Because Tulane's quarterback, for the life of me, I see his face. I see his face in my brain, but I can't remember his name for the life of Pratt. Something Pratt. Michael Pratt. Something like that. Michael Pratt. Something like that. That's what his name is. Ole Miss did beat Tulane. Duke can beat Texas to win this. I think this is a pretty obvious game right here. Texas is probably the second best team in the SEC. They're going to get that easy number 5 seed because I don't think they're beating Georgia, but we'll get there when we get there. Yeah, I do have Texas winning this game right here. And then you have the number 11 seed Utah Utes at the Oregon Ducks. A rematch of the 2 former Pac-12 teams. 2 of some of the best Pac-12 teams, really, over the last couple of seasons, except for Washington. This Utah team, like I said, Cam Rising is returning. Kyle Whittingham is one of the greatest coaches in the country. You know, he's been there forever. I think he's been at Utah longer than Nick Saban was at Alabama. I'm like 95% sure. I say 95% sure because he could have joined probably the same year, but I don't know. I do think that this is going to be a win for Oregon right here. I do think that Dylan Gabriel and this offense is just going to be too much for this Utah defense. Although it is Cam Rising that's returning, that could very well help out this Utah offense, I still don't have a lot of hope for their defense. There's still a lot of holes left in there. But we will just see what Kyle Whittingham will do with this team. They very well could get the upset here, but in my opinion, I do have the number 6 seed Oregon winning. And then up next, you have the number 10 Michigan Wolverines playing at the number 7 Ole Miss Rebels. Now, Ole Miss, they still do have Jackson Dart. Michigan lost a lot of people. What's his name? The head coach at Ole Miss. I keep forgetting people's names. I'm not good with names. He used to be the offensive coordinator at Alabama. Hold on. Lane Kiffin. Lane freaking Kiffin. Come on, run the damn ball, Kiffin. No, I'm sorry. Ole Miss did lose Quinshon Judkins, and I think that that's really going to hurt them this season. That was one of the good things that Michigan did have at their offense was a great rushing defense, and I do think that that's going to show, if they still had Quinshon Judkins, I do think Ole Miss would win this game because Quinshon Judkins is probably the only person that'd be able to run through this Michigan defense, and he will while at Ohio State. Give me the Wolverines. I think Sharon Moore is going to do a really good job. He won every single game that he was the interim head coach for at Michigan last year when Jim Harbaugh was serving his self-serve suspension. Say that 3 times fast. I do know a lot of Ole Miss fans are going to be very disappointed with that, but I do have Michigan playing and beating Ole Miss. And then the last of the first round matchups, you have the Alabama Crimson Tide at the number 8 Notre Dame Fighting Irish. This is one of my favorite non-conference rivalry games, Notre Dame fans hate Alabama fans. Alabama fans hate Notre Dame fans. They've played in national championships, playoff games. I don't think they've played in the regular season lately. I don't think so. But these teams are the 2 teams that argue who has the most good national championship teams, and I'd argue Alabama since they have more, but Notre Dame had the most for a good while until Nick Saban just decided to go freaking crazy and just win 15 million of them. But Notre Dame, just because of them not being in a conference and they schedule a lot of easy teams to play against, is going to be the reason why they're going to have a good record to make the playoffs. So I do have Alabama winning and beating the number 8 seed, in my opinion, Notre Dame Fighting Irish. So now that we have our first 4 games done, let's go ahead and get into our next 4 games. Now these second round matchups right here, I think are quarterfinals. Right here, now these matchups do include a couple of, some would call rematches, so we'll get into them when we get into them. But for the first matchup, we do have the number 5 seed Texas versus the number 4 seed Oklahoma State. So Oklahoma State would theoretically get a first week bye. You want to know what's very interesting about these 2 teams right here? Is they faced off in the Big 12 championship just last season. The rematch of the Big 12 championship. That's why I think Oklahoma State's going to make it and win this year, because they're probably going to be the best Big 12 team left after Oklahoma and Texas leave. This is a very obvious one right here. Oklahoma State is not going to be good enough to beat this Texas team. I'm going to have to take Texas here again. Now, this will be a a New Year's Six bowl game. I'm not sure what team is getting which one. I think we'll have to find out in the postseason. But this is a matchup between the number 5 and number 4 seeds. Argue all you want about Oklahoma State making the top 4. That's just how the playoff seeding works. That's not me saying they're a top 4 team. That's why I think it'd be a very easy win for Texas right here. And then next up, you have the number 6 Oregon Ducks and the number 3 Clemson Tigers. Now, here is, Clemson after their first bye week in the playoffs. Now, here's where I mentioned earlier that Clemson's going to lose after their bye week. I do have Oregon winning this one theoretically. This is just a simulation in my own little brain, because our brains basically are little computers. This should be another easy win for Oregon. Just because Clemson gets a top 4 playoff seed doesn't mean they're a better team than Oregon. Oregon has Dylan Gabriel. They're probably going to have a top 10 offense in the country, possibly even top 5. There's a reason why I expect a lot of the teams that they face to beat them by more than 30 to 35 points in this season. So give me Oregon in this matchup right here to move on to the semifinals. And then up next, a lot of people are going to love this right here. I didn't do this on purpose. This is just how it turned out. The number 10 Michigan Wolverines versus the number 2 Ohio State Buckeyes in the rematch of the game rivalry here in the quarterfinals of the national championship college football playoffs. Holy cow, would this be a crazy game. Now, nobody's going to be able to get a home team advantage right here. But I don't think that that's going to matter. I think Ohio State's going to grab another win. Ohio State is going to move on to at least the semifinals. But we'll have to see when we get there. Michigan, they haven't retained a lot of talent. As I said in the video before, except on the defense. There's a good bit of people they retain on the defense, but the offense is not going to be good enough to beat this Ohio State team. This Ohio State defense was one of the best in the conference last year, one of the best in the country last year. Arguably, this is a very easy win for Ohio State. I do think it's going to be closer when they face in the regular season, but I think that this is going to be like flip-flop of what you would think, in my opinion. We'll have to see. And then in the last of the semifinal, the quarterfinal matchups, I have the number 9 Alabama and the number 1 Georgia Bulldogs. Another one that just turned out to be a rematch from the regular season, and this could possibly end up being your SEC championship game too, depending on how well Texas does and Alabama. Alabama, as I said earlier, you lost Nick Saban, you lost Dallas Turner, you lost Kool-Aid McKinstry, you lost Jermaine Burton. But you do keep Jalen Milroe, and that seems to be the one key quality that's keeping this Alabama team afloat. This Georgia team, man, is one of the best teams, if not the best teams of the last 5 years. I think they have a possibility of going undefeated and winning the national championship game, but of course, we will have to get there when we get there. I have Georgia winning in the rematch here. I think that this is going to be more of a blowout than it would be in the regular season, because this game on the regular season is at Alabama. I'm 50% sure. Yeah, it's at Alabama. So this is going to be an easier win for Georgia. That's just how I got it. And so our final 4 teams, the number 1 Georgia Bulldogs, the number 2 Ohio State Buckeyes, the number 5 Texas Longhorns, and the number 6 Oregon Ducks. So here in our semifinal matchups right here, you have the number 1 Georgia Bulldogs versus the number 6 Oregon Ducks. Rematch from that one kickoff game from a couple of seasons ago where Georgia absolutely demolished Oregon and Bo Nix. Now, I'm sorry to all Oregon fans, including Neon King. Georgia's probably going to win this one too. It's just because of their defense, Georgia has the greatest defense in the country. They have for the last couple of seasons. Georgia, there's a reason why. And their offense was also really, really good last season. Carson Beck, top 3 quarterback in the SEC, top 5 in the country possibly. You could argue him being number 1 or number 2 in the SEC too. Up there with Quinn Ewers. And, Oregon, I don't know if I have enough faith in their defense against this Georgia team. That's a really good defense, but it's not an elite defense. That's an elite offense, in my opinion, which I think Georgia's even better elite defense is going to be able to stop this Oregon team. So give me Georgia moving on to the national championship, and they will face off against either the number 2 seed Ohio State Buckeyes or the number 5 seed Texas Longhorns. Now, Texas, they do have Quinn Ewers, but their defense, don't know if I have a lot of hope in. Ohio State's offense, don't know if I had a lot of hope in. Their defense, I do have a lot of hope in. It's going to be, the main part is just going to be, okay, is Texas's offense going to be able to score against this defense? And is Ohio State's defense going to be able to stop this Texas offense? You know, because both teams, like Ohio State's offense versus Texas's defense, is not really going to be the interesting part of this matchup, in my opinion. But I do think that Ohio State's defense is just going to slide over, like a 1 or 2 point win. Very dramatic game right here, in my opinion, against Texas. Give me the Buckeyes to move on. And ladies and gentlemen, in the Trasher Football 12-team predictions national championship game of the first ever 12-team playoff, I have the number 1 seed Georgia Bulldogs and the number 2 seed Ohio State Buckeyes. And you're thinking, Trasher, why didn't you give any crazy wins to a number 5 seed or number 4 seed? Because it's just the predictions. I don't really see any big upsets unless you're looking at numbers, like I did have the number 6 Oregon beating 3 Clemson and 5 Texas beating 4 Oklahoma State. If you just look at numbers, even into the quarterfinal games with Michigan and Ole Miss, 2 could probably be considered as an upset. But for the national championship game right here, give me the Georgia Bulldogs to beat Ohio State. This is going to be a battle of the 2 defensive teams, and I do have Georgia probably winning about 28 to 20, 21, something like that. A 1 possession game right here win for the Georgia Bulldogs. So, ladies and gentlemen, in my opinion, the winner of the national championship game is the Georgia Bulldogs. Again, sorry, I'm so tired. I'm not even going to edit that out because some of you guys don't really care. But, I mean, the number 1 seed and the number 2 seed is probably a little bit too easy to choose off right here. But I think that's just what's going to happen. They're the top 2 teams in the country. Georgia's the better team. And they're probably going to win the national championship, which would mean that they would go the 13-0 to win the the SEC championship game, 14-0 against Alabama, and then wait, hold on, no, I got that right, yeah, and then the 15-0 against Oregon, and then the 16-0 against Ohio State. So I think Georgia is going to become the first ever SEC, not the, I'm so sorry. The first ever 16, sorry, I got people messaging me on Discord. The first ever 16-0 team in college football history. In my opinion, the biggest possibility will go to the Georgia Bulldogs. Complain all you want in the comments. I got to edit this video. This video was running on almost 40 minutes long. Hope you guys enjoyed this video. Please leave a like down below, and I'll see you guys later.